Hey, it's Joe, and welcome to another episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Today, we'll be talking with Tobias all about debunking autonomous software testing myths. I talk to a lot of people, and there's all kinds of things floating around, and Tobias is an expert. He's really going to share some light on a lot of these things that you may not really understand correctly, or maybe we're misunderstanding. So really excited to have him back on the show. If you don't know, Tobias has over 25 years of experience in software development and over 11 years in software testing in regulated markets. So he knows all the hard environments like medical and fintech, and it's backed by tons of real life experience. And he has a visionary mindset of how automated software testing should work nowadays, because he's seen how it worked before. And he has his hand in the pulse of AI and all the things that we're going to nowadays. He and his team has built a really cool autonomous software testing platform called TestResults IO, which really helps you increase software quality standards worldwide. Uses out a bunch of customers, bunch of clients, works beautifully. So really excited to get his thoughts on this as well. He's also an international speaker. He's actually spoken at Automation Guild a few years ago and an AI trainer at the National Training Week in Malaysia. So he also knows AI. It's not just a buzzword for him. Really excited to have him back on the show. You don't want to miss it. Check it out. Hey, before we get into today's awesome interview, be sure to check out Test Results' new product, User One, that Tobias mentions later on in this episode. It's really cool because it aims at helping you automate non-automatable applications and also enhance your end-to-end testing with automated software testing from the most important part from your user's perspective. So sign up for free now using the link down below and tell them the Test Guild sent you. Hey, Tobias, welcome to the Guild.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for being back.
Yeah, great to have you finally back. It's been a while. So a lot of things change in the industry. I think last time we spoke was might have been almost 2 years ago. What's the big buzz now going on with AI?
Yeah, I think the buzz moved on from AI to autonomous testing, isn't it? So like 2 years ago, it was all about AI, and how we integrate AI into product. Meanwhile, it's all autonomous testing.
Absolutely. So that's a good point. So I've been hearing a lot of a lot of things. I'm not sure exactly people know what autonomous testing is. I think they just equate it with just the way they understand automated testing. So what's the difference between like automated testing and autonomous testing nowadays?
Yeah, and Joe, that is a good question, actually. What is autonomous testing? I mean, in the end, I dissected all of the different tools out there that say like, hey, we do autonomous testing. And most of the time you find something like you already had in the 80s, like a web crawler that is taking screenshots from all of the pages and is comparing the screenshots every single day and highlights if there's a change on the page. And in a sense, you can say that is actually autonomous because, yeah, it just does it on its own and it finds problems and it can tell you there is a problem. Apparently, you need to fix that. But that is nothing that I would actually see as an autonomous testing. It's more or less like a static crawling of web pages, right? So, and what else I've seen in the meantime is like things, and that is most of the autonomous tools are wrappers around Selenium or Appium or Playwright that actually take some HTML code, push that to a GPT-4 model or any different kind of LLM like Claude, actually get back the fields and try to identify some locators of that and then generate some code for Playwright and you can run it. And that's also not really autonomous, right? Because in the end, autonomous, what does it actually mean? What is autonomous testing? Because if you think about it, if you would have autonomous testing, and that is what I always say, that's also what I say in the training week, it's actually like if you would have autonomous testing, real autonomous testing, then we wouldn't need to have testing at all. Because if I just have a system and tell them, hey, find me all the bugs in that system, why can I not tell the system in the beginning, behave like this system? So if there's full autonomous testing, we don't need testing at all. So most of the autonomous part is actually marketing, and I'm guilty for that myself because we also claim like our system is autonomous. And as you might remember from last time, we also use the term artificial intelligence a bit different. So we use AI as a abbreviation, but we use it for augmented intelligence. And a lot of competitors also jumped on that wagon and said, like, we do have co-pilots. I mean, that is the newest trend right now, right?
Yeah.
It's like Microsoft started with Microsoft co-pilots, and now everybody has a co-pilot. And the best part on those is actually there's even one vendor out there that has a co-pilot that is actually explaining the test cases that you automated with the tool. So apparently the test automation is so complex that you need to have a co-pilot on top to explain the test case afterwards, after it's automated. And that is where we are right now, right? And that is actually the problem, that people think like autonomous testing, but in reality, so automated testing is the story about automated testing really told? So what is the benefit of automated testing these days? Or is it like, hey, automated testing didn't work like we always promised, and now we jump over to AI-based automated testing, and that doesn't work as well. So now we have autonomous testing, and that is one of the biggest problems in the whole market. Is like all of this marketing blah blah and these buzzwords that are being used, and everything is autonomous these days. And none of that is really autonomous. There's like a new player on the market as well that is saying like, we do have autonomous testing. And the only thing that I always do with all of those tools is like, I go to the tool, because most of them can only test web pages, right? That is where it starts. So you can only test web pages, and that's not really autonomous, because sometimes you need to go to an SAP system in the backend or stuff like that, or you need to check your mobile application. And what they actually do is like they have full autonomous testing, 100% autonomous testing. So I give those tools a chance and just enter the URL of the tool in the prompt and tell like, hey, test this system. And it's actually you. So you should know what you are if you are autonomous. So test yourself. And all of them that I tested failed on the login already. So they are not able to even log in if it's a two-factor authentication. And I mean, that is where autonomous is right now, right?
Right. So let's break that down a little bit more. So do you believe in autonomous testing, or you think it's just a buzzword and it's just automated tested, assisted by AI? Like, how do you define it?
The thing is, I do believe in autonomous testing, but I think we are not there yet. It's like Elon Musk proclaimed autonomous driving will be available in 2012, right? Yeah. Now it's 2024, and we still don't have autonomous driving. So I believe in autonomous testing, but not like in the sense of you give the system an application and it will just test it and report all of the bugs. So what I do understand in the term autonomous testing is like it just makes testing a lot easier, in the sense of there is a huge set of data. So what you use as an LLM, for example, that is actually trained on the different use cases of different kind of applications. So what I have in mind, if I talk about autonomous testing, is more or less like you give the testing platform a system to test and tell it, hey, this is a core banking application, and I want to test you the financial transaction parts. And then the system, based on all of the training that it got on core banking systems and financial transactions, it can actually test up to 80% really autonomously, and can give you an indication like, hey, so the last 15 times I executed the following test scenario for core banking applications for that specific pass, it resulted in this. And for your application you're testing right now, the result is completely different, and I cannot make sense out of that. So you need to look into that. And I think that is where autonomous testing is going.
Gotcha. So what's the role of a automation engineer or software tester when it comes to either autonomous testing once we get there, or even now? Did you believe in being replaced, or do you still see it as needing a human being in the middle of all this?
There's always a human being, right? I mean, did anybody in history of mankind ever get really replaced? Like you hear it all. Everybody is afraid right now. Like my lawyer is afraid that he gets replaced by AI, and the company that actually supported our funding is also afraid that they get replaced by AI, because it's all document work. But nobody ever got replaced. I mean, they just extended their skills, right? So right now you're doing something, and now there's the next evolution in technology. Now you're doing whatever you did before, and you can now do in a fraction of the time that it required beforehand. And now you can build up new skills, and you can be more efficient in time. I mean, that is actually how the whole economy works, right? Like, how much time can I provide within 1 hour? And that just needs to increase, because otherwise the economy has a problem.
That's a good point about lawyers. I actually had a long contract another company gave me. I said, let me just put it through AI and have it read it. And it brought up 5 points. I'm like, all right, those are valid 5 points, but I'm not going to trust it. I got an actual lawyer. It just helped me have a better conversation with the lawyer about potential pain points or issues with the contract. So it didn't replace them. It just helped facilitate better lawyering, I guess, or better.
Exactly. It made you the better customer in the end, right?
Yes.
I mean, because you were able to ask better questions. And that is what AI right now is. It's augmented. It helps you to understand what is there, to ask the better questions. So you are more efficient because you have more precise questions. Yep. The answers from the lawyer are a lot better in the beginning already. So you don't have this 1 hour long discussion before you understand the topic, because you already got those insights and you are more efficient in the time.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just looked at it, I'm like, I don't know. But then once you have the AI, have some talking points, it really did facilitate it better and quicker. I saved some money probably because it spent less hours of
Yeah.
her having to understand what the heck I was looking for.
The same is true for us, actually. Like all of those financial documents that we went through, it's like over 200 pages, and in the end, I mean, they are more or less similar, right? And they always have the similar points. And without any experience, it would have taken me days to go through those documents and to even understand them, actually. And then finding hiccups in those documents even takes longer. And that is what AI can do these days, because it's there is already a lot of data on that, but it doesn't replace the intellectual worker, right? The intellectual worker is just more efficient based on those tools.
Absolutely. So, I've been speaking with a few people, and they say that how a lot of times AI systems bubble up insights, and then a person needs to look at it and to determine whether or not it's a real issue. They think that's going to go away, and you're going to have to start trusting the AI to make the right decisions. Yeah. Do you see that as the right model, or is that where you see things going?
I don't know. I'm the kind of person that doesn't even trust my coworker. So I guess it depends. It depends a bit on character, right? How much are you willing to trust anyone in the first place? And the second one is like, how much are you trusting artificial intelligence? I mean, and that's the point. Is like go back like 12, 15 years, and everybody was claiming, yeah, we will have test automation and there will be 100% automation on that. And you just get the results out of all of those tests and you just need to trust it. And where are we right now? We still have flaky test cases, as sad as it sounds, but we are still in the beginning of all of that. And now I already hear a story about like, yeah, we just need to trust the artificial intelligence to give us the right results. And we've already seen that might actually be a problem. Again, I'm not on the side that says like, don't use artificial intelligence. It's just like use artificial intelligence in a way that it helps you. And the part is get the results fast, but control the results. That's my current stance on that. And I think that is my stance for the next 10 years as well. Even if you think about the progress that we made in the last 2 years. I mean, if you remember, OpenAI was started like 7 years ago. And where it went in those 7 years is tremendous. From if you see GPT-1 in comparison to where we are right now, it is in 7 years, and that is tremendous. And the thing is, nevertheless, I would stand my stance that in the next 10 years, there won't be the major breakthrough where you can just trust the result of an artificial intelligence. And just keep that in mind, because a lot of people believed in Elon Musk and say like, hey, autonomous driving, and that will be ready by 2012. And it was not in 2013. It was not in 2014. It's still not autonomous. And the thing is, and I'm claiming that because what people need to understand, driving is an extremely simple problem. If you think about that, a human needs about, I don't know, in average 20 hours of dedicated training on how to drive the car, right? And how long do you need training for an SAP system? It's for sure more than 2.5 days, because before you can actually use the SAP system or core banking application or even Microsoft Word. I mean, how long does it take to master all of those features? And that's the thing. So we are not able, apparently, to train an artificial intelligence or multiple artificial intelligence in an agent-based model that is able to solve a problem that we need training for like about 20 hours. And we already claim that we should trust a system that can do much, much, much more, in factors more than that simple system of keeping a car on a lane and making sure that there's no crash, which is difficult, but for a human, a rather simple task, actually.
So what do we do as testers and developers? We're being told all this. Our managers are probably hearing it saying, well, just use autonomous testing. You don't need to do anything else. I've asked a few people this, is AI in testing overhyped, properly hyped, or underhyped? And like, how do we know what it is?
Yeah, right now it's overhyped. That's a given. I mean, right now it's overhyped and it's still in the hype cycle. I think it's not yet settled down because we still don't know exactly what it actually is. Because what you hear is like, hey, test automation we only automated the execution. Now we have Gen AI and we can automate the rest of the pipeline as well. We can generate test cases. We can actually classify results. We can even generate bug reports that are readable and the developer can implement them. And even there, we can even extend that. The bug can be fixed automatically with GitHub Copilot and stuff like that. So we don't, right now AI is everywhere. And we already know that if something is everywhere, most of the time it doesn't work out. So there are specifics where it will help. And back to your question actually about the manager, and that is why we call our platform the autonomous testing platform, because that is actually what managers want to hear, right? So you actually, and that is marketing to get the food in there and show the solution. But what I think, what is really the future is more or less like a system where you do exploratory testing, and while you do your exploratory testing, you are actually training the test system in the background so that you can create a model, like an abstracted model of your application, where you can then use prompting in a more sophisticated way today, like simple prompting actually to set up all of your use cases. And that is where I see then the first step in autonomous testing. And the next is that all of those use cases that are prompted all over the world are combined more or less in an autonomous system.
Nice. So I just had a random thought. You know how we've heard about telemetry being implemented into systems where when a bug occurs, you could kind of trace it exactly to what's causing it. So if I had an automated test that's running, say in production, and it finds a bug, then not only can it alert someone that says there's a bug, but if they had the telemetry to know what caused it, they can go ahead and fix it as well. Do you see us getting there? Is that crazy thinking, or would you trust us?
That is actually what I hear as well. It's like one of our investors is actually in this open telemetry area, and he is a brilliant mind. The thing on that is also, I think it's also overhyped right now, to be honest, because there's a lot of problems. You get a lot of data, and a lot of people have a lot of silos with a lot of data, tracing data in there, but they cannot make sense out of that. And we are still in that phase on making sense out of the telemetry data that we receive, and then actually getting any benefit out of that data. But you are right. If we do have test cases that can run in production and we can actually monitor them via our telemetry data, so then we can easily identify that test case actually trigger the bug, and the bug is caused by this problem. And I think that is also part of the future. That is a given. And that is closer, actually, because all of the telemetry infrastructure is already there. Microsoft is gathering telemetry data, I think, for the last 25 years already. So we know how to do that. The majority doesn't yet know how to get the semantics out of all of that data, but we do know how to solve the problem. And we also know how to run test cases in production, right? And we also know how to isolate production. So we can take the production system and isolate that actually as a secondary production system. And that is something that is based on the new technologies that are available to us right now. And I think that is coming in the next 3 to 5 years, that we really use telemetry data first to capture what the test case did and what bugs were actually produced by that test case and where they need to be fixed in the code, but also to generate new test cases. Actually, if the telemetry data is not based on test cases being executed, but from real life customers, that you actually know, like, hey, okay, we rolled out that release, and apparently 10% of our consumers triggered that bug, and that's actually a chain to trigger the bug based on the telemetry data we received. So we generate a test case out of that, and that's the point. Then actually, do you still need autonomous testing in a sense, because you have your customers that are running it through the product and are defining exactly the way that needs to be tested. And I think that is a lot closer than full autonomous testing. I think that is happening in the next 2 to 3 years. That it's really productive. So it's already available today. You can do that. You can set it up on your own, and it works if you do everything right. But I think that is something that you can use out of the box in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I love that. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that will actually be the thing. Is nobody talks about that, right? Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence and autonomous testing and stuff like that, but that will be the real game changer.
Yep. Yeah.
Getting that telemetry data that is already out there in a connection to actually what happened and in connection to the test case, and then actually being able to fix the bug because you know exactly where it originated from. And that is the major game changer that's coming.
So you heard it here. We're going to replace SREs and developers as well then, right? No,
that's the point. We replace everyone, right? We replace everyone. And that's, by the way, that's a joke of the history, right? When I was still in college, there were open positions at Microsoft that were called like SDET, like software developer and test. And back in Germany, then I always thought like, hey, that is a software developer that's still being tested somehow. They still need to prove that they are able to do the stuff. finally I understood that no, that is a software developer that is actually writing automated test cases. And then the term disappeared, right? Because test automation or testing and automated testing was democratized. Everybody could do it. The business could test themselves and stuff like that. And hey, SDDET is coming back as a role. So companies are looking for software developers in test again. So that is actually interesting development. If you think about that, everything is getting more artificial intelligence. It's getting a lot easier. It's getting democratized. Nevertheless, the old roles are coming back. That should give us a hint.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more. We talk about autonomous testing, AI. A lot of companies are coming out. I want to, you do work for TestResults IO. You're one of the co-founders. So how's your approach different? Cause you're pretty a straight up guy. Every time I speak to you, you don't give me vendor pitch. So how is TestResults IO different? Cause you were built differently. And I think it's a unique way. So maybe people who missed the last episode, what is TestResults IO and how do you approach autonomous testing?
Yeah. So right now, TestResults IO is it's based on a completely different approach to identify elements, right? Because right now, what people often use or always use is they try to identify with which input do I need to interact? Where do I need to put my text in? Where do I need to select the value? And they need to they try to identify a locator for that. And that is wrong in every case. So that is why TestResults IO does differently. And what we use, because there is already a locator. There is something that you as a user tells you, that is the right field, right? If you see a field like a name, you know exactly that the next field should be my name. And it's not the nearest field, by the way. It's a logically next field, which is dependent on the culture that you were grown up and stuff like that. And that is actually what we put into TestResults IO. So it works completely different to any other system in the way on how it locates where it should interact. That's the first part. And then we do have the autonomous part where we are only partially autonomous. So it's not full autonomous testing. What we did is we trained the system to understand how scrolling works. So if it doesn't find an element on the page or in a list, for example, but it can identify that there is a way to scroll, and there are a myriad of ways to scroll actually in lists, for example, and you cannot automate that by hand. So we trained the system on what does scrolling actually mean and how does that work, and what is the specifica on scrolling, that you can be at the top, you can be at the bottom already, you are not able to scroll at all. And that is what we trained the system. And that is where we do have autonomous functionality in the system that you can just tell it hey, I want to go to that, I want to click that element, or I want to go to that page or something like that, and the system ensures that it can find that element if it's available. And that's a difference. And we also do have a different approach to Gen AI, because what you see in Gen AI is always the typical approach is this hey, I do have my requirements, or I do have screenshots from my application, generate test cases for that. And I also did a test with somebody on LinkedIn, and I said hey, I want to have test cases for WinWord, and then you always get those generic test cases the performance should be good, you should be able to log in, you should be able to not log in with wrong credentials, it shouldn't allow you to log in without providing a username. So the typical test cases that everybody who is involved in testing can write down out of their head. So there's no real benefit. You're generating thousands of test cases without much benefit. So what we do different is we are generating this model of your application. And then you're prompting use cases. For a used car platform, that's my primary example. It's you tell TestResults IO, I want to buy a car. I want to buy an Aston Martin, for example, for $6,000. And that is what you put in the prompt. And based on the model that you generate in the background, it will actually generate the interactive steps. So you don't need to understand how your application works. You just give it a use case, and the system is already smart enough, in most cases, to identify what that sequence is. And that is how you build up your testing, your test scenarios. That is how you build your user journeys. Because we don't talk about test cases anymore. We really think okay, what does the user want to achieve? And what are the steps to achieve that actually? And that is then auto-generated step by step. And that is aware of the context. So if you tell the system, hey, I want to, I tested the system for a German parcel service and put in the information. I want to send a package to Japan. And it generated all of the steps, and I just said yeah. And by the way, it has to have 4 kilograms, which is I don't know how many pounds, 8 pounds, and it just added that at the right position in the chain of interactions. That is what we are doing different. So the claim is not hey, give us the requirements and we generate all of the test cases for you. We democratized test generation. It's really No, we do augmented stuff, like give us a use case and we generate the steps for you, because that's the nasty part, right? Nobody wants to drag and drop those elements and select the right input. I mean, that's the nasty part. It's exactly like for the execution. I mean, the intellectual part is coming up with a test scenario and with the use cases that you can actually challenge the system with, but not executing a test case or dragging and dropping those elements and keeping the data intact. And that's the difference in
right.
test results.
Also, what I've seen is, when you work in an enterprise company, you hop different tech stacks almost. Yeah. And sometimes I need a test for a web browser. Now I need a test to test the back end. I need a test to test the main. Because I think using an image-based approach, it seems like I think you're able to get over those type of journeys almost. Yeah. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, completely. And that's the point. I always have to laugh if I see like we recreated end-to-end testing and then it's based on Playwright or Selenium or stuff like that, where you say like, okay, end-to-end is for you web pages, really?
Right.
And that's the point. In enterprise, you typically have a huge tech stack. You have web pages. You do have rich clients. You have fat clients still. You do have some backend systems. You have database systems and stuff like that. And that is if you do have a visual-based approach, then you can overcome all of those limitations because the technology doesn't matter anymore. It's even better. I mean, also for web pages, you know it better than I do, because HTML uses canvas, for example. So you can draw something on the HTML page and you can technically not test that. All of those tools do have fallbacks that they can compare an image, but if you compare pixel perfect images, that it just doesn't work. It's just not reliable. And that's a problem, because even within the supported tech stack, like if you say, I do have a solution that can test web pages, there are still the corners which you cannot test. Or the next one is Google released Flutter like 5 years ago, I don't know. And the first rendering for web was pixel perfect. So it actually used Canvas to render the whole interface. And all of those typical testing tools were not able to test it. Now they do have adapters and different renderers for Flutter. It all settled down. But if you do have a universal approach, and the universal approach is more or less like abstract the human eye. If you do have a universal approach, then those limitations will never be there. Even in the future, I can now already proclaim that any new user interface framework that you might come up with, or anybody else at the big companies come up with, we can already support that today.
Love it. I have in my notes for some reason, user one, technology independent. Is that what what does that phrase mean?
So that is something that we are working on right now. That is what I mentioned as the technical solution that I see as the future, is where you actually have access to the system, where you want to test all of the different applications that you want to test. And you just click through the applications and the system is learning in the background actually how the application behaves in those different scenarios. And based on that, it is generating an abstract model. And based on that model, you can afterwards then prompt all of the interactions that you want to have automated. And that supports you tremendously in your day-to-day work. And that is actually what we call the user one, right? Because there's typically in open telemetry or telemetry area, there's also already you get the telemetry data for development. So it's more or less the first dashboard that you ever want is the one based on telemetry data. And the first user that you ever wanted is more or less like your tester. And that is why we call that the user one technology that we're coming up with, like in the next 6 to 9 months, that will be publicly available. You can already register today for being a design customer for that. And that will exactly be like also like the, I don't like the term game changer anymore because GPT uses that a lot in the text that it generates.
Yeah. Game changer in the realm of automation testing.
Exactly. Everything is a game changer these days. And I think that is just the next evolution, because it combines the exploratory testing of a human with intellect with the combination of being able to autonomously define test cases based on a model that you as a human generated and based on the use cases you defined. And based on that, you actually set the boundaries to allow the system in the state that we are right now to understand, is the output that I get right or is it wrong? And that is the next evolution in testing for me. It's more or less that you don't do test automation in typical way, but you just test your application like an exploratory tester, and afterwards you can just prompt your test cases, pretty simple, and get precise results on that. So it's not about trust artificial intelligence anymore. It's about you set the boundaries and you need to trust what you said actually. And that is a completely different approach once again to how to use all of that technology that are available today.
Yeah, it seems like the perfect combination of keeping the tester in the loop, that using their expertise on the application and their assumptions and having AI just, yeah.
Exactly. And that's the point. I mean, everybody who worked in testing is like, I still remember the story. It's like the best guy whoever wrote the specification was one of the testers in my team, because they actually understand the system and they understand the user, and they can actually, they also think extremely precise. So they come up with precise requirements that are actually implementable and that are testable. And that is you need somebody like that in the loop. It's always like there's always in robotics, there's meanwhile the term like human in the loop. So there's like a human that controls the robot, and the robot needs to be sure that it doesn't break the human somehow. There is like those human in the loop robots, and I think that is also required for testing. It's like there will be more and more robotic stuff like automated execution and stuff like that, and automated design, but there's always a human in the loop. And that is what I mentioned beforehand. Is like I don't see full autonomous testing for the next 10 years.
Wow, very nice. So what's the name of this new product called? Is it?
That will actually be TestResults IO User 1.
User 1, okay, cool.
Yeah, it is really User 1, because that is the first user that you want to like have your system exercise.
Nice. Is there anything else you're working on? I also have written down something called TestResults IO Instant. I don't know where I got that from, but
yeah, that was just a technical term for actually bringing User 1 to everyone in the world, because we did some as you mentioned in the intro, it's like TestResults IO is spreading around the world, and we noticed that the current delivery process is difficult in different areas of the world because it just works different. And the TestResults IO Instant is more or less like the technology vehicle that we use to deliver the TestResults IO User 1 experience to everyone. So if you use a Mac today, even if you use the most bizarre Unix setup that you can ever come up with, you will be able to use User 1.
Very cool. Okay, Tobias, before I go, is there one piece of actionable advice you can give to someone to help them with their autonomous testing efforts? And what's the best way to find, contact you, or get our hands on what sounds like User 1 from testresults.io?
Yeah, for User 1, I guess you can easily register on TestResults.io. You can register to be a design customer. We are always looking for feedback. So if you want to get hands on stuff that is ahead of what you currently see of co-pilots and all of the stuff that's currently coming out, like the best new thing, if you want to be ahead of that wave, just join the waiting list for being a design customer. We do have some expectations for design customers. So you really need to be hands-on on the system. You really need to have experience in automated testing, and you really need to be dedicated to actually give us your time, that you really go into the system and challenge it. Actually.
Thanks again for your automation awesomeness. The links to everything of value we covered in this episode, head on over to testguild.com/A496. And if the show has helped you in any way, why not rate it and review it in iTunes? Reviews really help in the rankings of the show, and I read each and every one of them. So that's it for this episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. I'm Joe, and my mission is to help you succeed with creating end-to-end, full-stack automation awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Head on over to testguild.com for full show notes, amazing blog articles, and online testing conferences. Don't forget to subscribe to the Guild to continue your testing journey.